What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Ultimate Spider-Man, and Peter Parker is getting a new suit in the Ultimate Universe, and it's amazing. That's only the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, all kinds of crazy stuff happens here. So, what this does is this initially picks up with Peter Parker and Harry Osborn meeting up with Otto Octavius. Now, this is one of those moments where there's a really cool callback to the original Ultimate Universe in Marvel Comics, Earth 1610. Because remember, this is the new Ultimate Universe, Earth 6160. And the reason why I say it's a cool callback is because in the original Ultimate Universe, Otto Octavius was a lab assistant for Norman Osborn. And here, it's much the same way, that Otto was hired on by Norman before his death, before Harry took over the company. And so Harry kind of brought him on as well. But the reason why they're all basically meeting here is because they've been trying to figure out the nature of their suits. That's one of the things to keep in mind. Harry Osborn basically has his suit by way of Stark tech after the death of Howard Stark and Tony Stark taking off into the future to kind of deal with everything. As always, if you need to get caught up, there's a playlist at the end of all this. The important thing to understand is that they're using Stark technology. With Peter himself, his suit was presented to him by Tony Stark personally, but they still don't know a lot about how their suits work. And that's one of the things that Otto says. He says, your suits are both Stark tech, but they were built using two completely different types of engineering. Call it Stark 1.0 and Stark 2.0. And he says, Harry, your suit is basically a dedicated piece of very sophisticated hardware. Top of the line, flawlessly constructed. If pressed, I'd actually call it the perfect war machine. I mean, it is more than that, sure. Navigation, propulsion, and onboard AI. And that's something that we'll get back to here in a second. But as a piece of tech, I can get inside it, customize it, do whatever we want. We own it now, top to bottom, front to back. But this Picotech suit of yours, Peter, it's beyond that. Highly adaptable, transformative, and it's going to take a bit more time. Now, one of the things that you guys are going to realize here is that Jonathan Hickman is doing something really cool with Picotech, because to kind of bring this in, right? Picotech is not like nanotechnology, and it's not like a traditional Iron Man suit. Picotech is basically like restructuring and allowing the atoms of the suit itself to form whole new molecules and different things like that, almost as if the suit were alive. And so what you get here is Spider-Man just kind of like, look, are we sure about this? Because number one, Otto just kind of seems like a really weird guy. And two, we don't know where his loyalties lie. We know it lies to you supposedly, but what if they got to him? Right now, of course, I'm kind of offering that little bit of an exposition myself, but when Peter, or at least when I imagine Peter saying they, of course, we're talking about the Illuminati, who we'll talk about here in a second, because they do come back and we do get something really cool that goes on here. But what Otto tells them is he says both suits run on the same network. They don't have to, they can operate independently, but while they do, they're subject to network commands, which is how Harry shut your suit down the first time the two of you met. Now that was a really cool moment, right? Like literally Harry, like when they first fight each other, Harry like touches Peter and shuts his suit down and sees his face. And then Harry reveals his face, right? And then they just kind of become friends after that. But here's the real kicker, right? He says up to now, they've both been running in a kind of safe mode. They actually have an onboard artificial intelligence that you can use for anything. Combat analysis, life support, any kind of higher functioning problem solving, really. We just need to turn them on and give them a profile to map to. And so what Otto had done is he had created some kind of default profiles of his own, right? Napoleon, Lincoln, Caesar, Gandhi. He even made one of himself because, right, what's Otto Octavius if not some guy who's incredibly arrogant? And then Peter says, I'd like to just be able to talk to myself. And so it's like, okay, cool. We can do that, right? We can literally take this Pico suit AI technology and map it to your brainwaves. So it effectively takes on your identity. You can clearly see where this is going. And if you don't, it's fine, right? I'll explain it once we get to that point, but it'll become painfully clear here in the next little bit. I'm sure most people are guessing it already. But then the question's asked to Harry, right? Whose voice do you want to have in your head? And the response of Harry is, I want to hear my dad, right? I want to be able to talk to my father. And so what you do at this point is you switch over to Kingpin. Now, again, here's one of the cool things about this, because he's visited by Captain Britain, who again is a Frenchman, which is kind of crazy. But remember, Captain Britain is a member of the Illuminati, the secret council of basically dark heroes, villains that control the world behind the scenes. Yes, the Incredible Hulk in this reality is one of those guys. But what ended up going on here is that as part of the Illuminati, they've stationed what what are effectively lieutenants in different parts of the world in order to ensure that the campaigns and the schemes of the Illuminati are carried out and their control is maintained. Wilson Fisk is one of those. And one of the things that Fisk had talked about was the nature of Spider-Man, the danger of Spider-Man. And in reality, like, Captain Britain had just kind of hand-waved it away. But one of the best things about Wilson Fisk's character, both from the main Marvel Universe, the original Ultimate Universe, and I love seeing it being carried on here, is that yes, he is this great big huge bear of a man, right, who can tear you apart with his bare hands, but he's almost equally as intelligent, right? He is incredibly capable when it comes to planning, scheming, and being aware of things that are going on. And that's kind of what you get here, right, where he had like warned Captain Britain, this guy Spider-Man is not the weakling that you think he is. I mean, sure, I nearly broke him apart with my bare hands, but the fact is, this guy will present a credible thorn in our side. And so in a kind of bit of humbleness to a degree, Captain Britain's kind of like, yes, right, you were right, I was wrong, so I brought an entire team of my agents, which are basically like bullseyes. Now, it is interesting that this was done because what he does, and I imagine what Hickman's doing here, is he's kind of building on Shadowland to a degree, right? That like Captain Britain says, it embarrasses me that I lack a more subtle out, but I suppose there are worse ideas than throwing numbers at the problem. What do you say, Mr. Fisk? Now, the reason why I say this is a reference to Shadowland is to kind of sidetrack from the story for a quick second, not too long. Shadowland was a story where basically Matt Murdock, Daredevil, was possessed by a being called the Beast. He's basically like the god of the mystical ninja clan, the Hand. He ends up coming back to New York and basically seizing control of Hell's Kitchen and, for the most part, New York itself. The Hand are these just crazy, capable ninjas where they just like throw them at you. Right, so depending on your level of power, let's say, for example, the Hand wanted to kill Captain America or they wanted to kill Wolverine, they would just send hundreds of ninjas in, right, to attack these guys, just overwhelm them with sheer numbers. And then any of those ninjas who were killed would be resurrected from the dead, right? That's the way that the Hand worked. And so in Shadowland, Bullseye, like the actual Bullseye, fought something like 100 of these guys, or a couple hundred of these guys, and held his own against every single one of them. It was crazy. It's one of the best moments of Bullseye in Marvel Comics. He's criminally underrated. And so this kind of feeds into that idea. It's not quite, you know, on the nose, but just sort of borrowing that concept. And so ultimately, like, Wilson Fisk turns the idea down. He's like, no, right? Like, this is my city. I know exactly how to handle it, right? And so the question is asked by Captain Britain, do you have a plan? He says, yes, I will not tell you what my plan is. Just understand, I do not have a plan. I have 6 of them. And so what you do is you switch back over to Spider-Man and Harry Osborn as the two of them are just kind of facing off against each other. And the cool thing is that what ends up happening is the AI is turned on. And when it activates, of course, Harry hears the voice of his father and Peter just hears seemingly the voice of himself. But notice the speech bubble here, right? A black speech bubble with white letters. That should also tell you what's going on because there's only one character in the Spider-Man mythos that has that speech bubble that looks like that, right? So, well, I guess maybe there's 2, but this is obviously not the other one. But the cool thing is, like, once they start going against each other, one of the things that we realize pretty quickly is that Norman Osborn's voice in Harry's head is a lot more aggressive than Peter's voice. Essentially offense versus defense, right? That as Peter and Harry are sparring with each other, the voice of Norman says a fight is not won after one good punch, and never let your guard down. There's always someone out there trying to beat you, hurt you, take everything from you. They killed me. What do you think they'll do to you? And so, of course, when he gets hit by Peter, the voice of Norman chimes in, right? Soft, 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 right? Just kind of keeps goading his son on. And so the fight continues on, right? This kind of skirmish of sorts. And the voice says, I always wondered just how weak you are, Harry. I'm beginning to think I know. You are not avenging me, son. You're embarrassing me. And what it does is it drives Harry to the point that he fires off this kind of energy shot and hits Peter. And that's when Peter's voice chimes in, right? Yeah, our diagnostics are within acceptable levels. We'll be fine, but he needs therapy. So you guys kind of see what's going on with these two guys. And for those of you guys who haven't really figured it out yet, again, you know, I'll explain it in a second, but understand this isn't really animosity or anything like that, because once the sparring's done, they're just kind of like, man, that was a really, really good fight, right? So it's not like they've somehow become mortal enemies over the course of this bit of a scrimmage. But then Otto shuts it all down because there's a third Stark carrier wave that's shown up here, and that Otto cannot block it out. It just takes a back door and hijacks their signals. And of course, It's the arrival of Tony Stark from the future. And he tells Peter, right? He says, I told you I'd be back in 6 months, and here I am. I just have one question for you. Are you a hero yet? Now, one of the things that I want to specify is that all of this takes place in the month of July. And that's important because what we do is we jump forward by a month to August. Now, one of the reasons why Marvel's doing this, and it's an important thing to know, Marvel's tracking the Ultimate Universe in real time. Like what you're seeing here is happening in real time. And so that's why like this particular comic, the one that we're covering now, Ultimate Spider-Man number 8, it came out in August, right? Ultimate Spider-Man 7 came out in July. The final part of this, part 9, came out in September. So it's cool to see that it's tracking in real life. And in fact, Marvel's actually launching a one-shot comic, which is, what is it? It's Ultimate Universe 1 year later or something like that. So following comics in real time is dope. I'm really digging it actually. But what we do is we pick up here in August, right? We will jump back to July here in a second, but we pick up basically in August itself. And Peter is just kind of getting ready for the family to go do something. And the Picotech ball that houses his suit starts talking to him, right? And he's like, well, that's disappointing, but tell the kids I said happy birthday. And Peter's kind of shocked, right? He's like, wait a minute, like you don't, like how are you talking? And the response of the suit is, oh, well, I mean, we've always talked, Peter. Like we've been talking ever since I was activated. And Peter's like, yeah, but I mean, like you're talking out loud and you're not talking with the suit and you're talking to me unless this is in my head. And the suit kind of messes with him a bit and it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, of course it's in your head. Just messing around. You know, he's like, but it's just one of these things where we've been talking for quite some time. And it even says, I'm a perfect replica of your psyche housed in a totally independent, completely adaptable Pico shell. Of course I can talk and I can do all kinds of things, Peter. And so Peter's just kind of like, okay, well, I gotta go, but like, we'll talk about this later. And the response to the suit is, I look forward to it. And please remember to wish the kids happy birthday for me. So the suit is effectively sentient now. And so what you do is you jump back 3 weeks ago to July when Peter and Stark started talking. And one of the things they do is they're just kind of like, okay, we have questions about our suits. Right? And initially Tony's kind of like, that's the only question you really have. And the response of Peter is, I mean, yeah, basically. I mean, there's others, but like, that's the most important that we have at the moment. And so he's like, explain why it is that Harry's suit is different from mine and why both of our suits are different from yours. And that's why Stark says, it was the last breakthrough that my father made before he died. But Picotech is revolutionary, way beyond anything that I even know how to make. Only my father really knew how to do it. When I was putting together the packages to send back in time, I thought it should go to someone who might need it the most. Something special for someone special. And where Peter initially responds and is just kind of like, I mean, why, like, what makes me so special? The response of Tony is, honestly, man, it's just because of the database that the maker kept. And it's the fact that you were at the top of the list. Now, I have a question that I want to ask you guys here, right? Should I make a video explaining the history of the maker in Marvel Comics? Because again, like the Ultimate Universe miniseries and then like this actual Ultimate Spider-Man run, it tells you everything you need to know about the maker. But I think it would be a lot easier for people who are getting caught up to just point them to a single video where they can understand what's going on instead of consistently saying the maker is an evil version of Reed Richards who changed history in this universe. So Peter Parker never became Spider-Man and Captain America was never thought out and different things like that. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. But it makes sense that Peter would be at the top of the list because in Marvel Comics, really when you look at the main Marvel universe, Captain America is kind of like the guy that all the superheroes rally around in times of crisis. And the Fantastic Four are like the first family of superheroes whose roles have largely transcended traditional superhero activities, which is why in Marvel Comics, you don't see the Fantastic Four fighting villains of the week anymore. They're all out exploring like the multiverse and fighting some alternate reality version of Doom or something along those lines. But in terms of everything that a superhero represents, doing the right thing as often as they can, regardless of what odds they may face, always overcoming those odds, and almost representing this sort of beacon of light out there in a world that can oftentimes be incredibly dark. That's Spider-Man. And so because Spider-Man is so significant, of course he would be the number one guy that like the maker would stop, right? Stop Peter from becoming Spider-Man first, and then everything else will be easy to sort out. And so as the two of them are kind of talking to each other, Harry also asked the question, like, Am I supposed to be on this list? Now, there is a bit of back and forth between Harry and Tony Stark that goes on here. It's not overly important. It's more about the idea of Harry Osborn taking over what used to be Stark Tech and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the really big thing is that number one, Tony Stark tells Peter the Maker returns in a little over a year. You need to be ready for him. And the second thing that happens is Harry asks the question, where was I on your list? And the response of Tony is, you weren't on the list at all. But the fact that you're hanging out with Spider-Man means you're probably supposed to be important on some level. And so he's like, keep the suit, right? Keep all the technology. It doesn't really matter to me. You can even have the company if you want to, right? Like, I'm off doing bigger and more important things. And we know he is, right? Like, for those of you guys who aren't really tracking Ultimate Iron Man, his story's covered in the Ultimates comic, which we, of course, have also covered. So you're welcome to take a look at that if you want to. We may or may not add it to the playlist. And if not, I'll just post a link to it down in the description for the channel. But the fact is that, like, this leads to Tony Stark essentially taking off. And it just kind of leaves Peter and Harry Osborn kind of mulling over everything he said. So this is where things get dope, because what happens here is you switch over to Wilson Fisk. And what happens is he's told by his assistant Wesley that all these guys that he's brought are on their way. Each member is a leader of the 5 boroughs. And what Kingpin did is when he took over the city of New York, he stationed lieutenants of his own, captains if you want to call them that basically oversee one of the boroughs. Brooklyn, Staten Island, the Bronx, Queens, and Manhattan. Now there is a 6th borough that nobody knows about that, like, Wilson Fisk will point to here. But what happens is we're given each one of these guys. The first, of course, is Martin Lee, who most of you guys know as Mr. Negative. But we're kind of given this explanation by Hickman in terms of, like, who these characters are in this universe. And he says Martin Lee is the CEO of the Feast Foundation by day. It's a philanthropic outreach center that provides food and shelter for the needy of New York City. Seemingly a good, possibly even great man. But by night, he runs the gang known as the Demons, who hold Queens tightly in their grasp. Their dominion is untraceable. The occasional enemy who threatens them often crumbles from within, only needing a slight push to topple. I know that this is because Mr. Negative possesses psychological superhuman abilities, namely that of mind control. This is a secret closely held and easily maintained. After all, no reputable news organization would publish these rumors, and the Daily Bugle takes great pride in denying them. Mr. Lee is reserved, predictable, and your most dependable lieutenant. On the other hand, there's Walter Hardy, once considered the greatest top floor thief in the world. The notorious Black Cat seemingly retired after having never been caught. Once retired, Hardy used his acquired wealth to consolidate and control his territory in the Bronx. He also started a family. Tragically, his wife passed away several years ago, leaving behind only a daughter. Now, this is a really, really cool moment here. And the reason why is because even though this is a new Ultimate Universe, and we're told outwardly he appears to be the picture of a good soldier, privately, we know he goes on the prowl every night. He doesn't do it for money, he does it for the thrill. He's in this for entertainment. As such, his motivations are often unaligned with yours. I think this makes him dangerous. Now, that is something to keep in the back of your head, because that will become incredibly important as we get further into this. Now, this is when we're introduced to the 3rd member of what is clearly now known as the Sinister Six. And this is Kraven the Hunter. And I gotta be honest with you guys, Kraven the Hunter looks amazing in this. I love the way he looks. And I really wish Marvel would adapt him to look this way in the main Marvel universe. I mean, he looks so dope, right? But again, his history is very similar to the one from the main Marvel universe, right? More dangerous and more directed is Sergei Kravenov. He's a billionaire oligarch excommunicated from Russia during the Rasputin Purge. The mutants were very clear. He is no longer welcome in the motherland. He is a hunter born of a long line of hunters. He has hunted and killed most everything that can be hunted and killed. And he always hunts in pairs. One he kills, one he saves. Both trophies he preserves. The former is displayed in his lair, the latter for the public in his zoo. I do not think he will be satisfied until he has killed one of everything. And so this is when we go into the next member of the Sinister Six, which is Mysterio. But here's the coolest thing, right? We're told Brooklyn belongs to Mysterio. Beyond that, of him, we know nothing, right? And it's so cool because I love Mysterio as like this guy who literally is mysterious. They don't know anything about this guy. They don't know his real name. They don't know where he operates out of. They don't know how he maintains control. He's literally just this enigma that controls the borough of Brooklyn. I love it, man. Now, as you guys notice, we've only named off 4 people here, right? It's supposed to be the Sinister Six, and there's supposedly 5 boroughs. And so what you do here is you pick up with basically Kingpin saying there's actually 6 boroughs. And this was a genius maneuver by Jonathan Hickman that I wasn't entirely sure I initially agreed with, but that I absolutely love now that I think about it. What he does here is he says the underworld is larger than all of the other 5 boroughs combined, and it is the foundation on which they rest. Some people think they can escape your iron fist. They think they can slip through the cracks, disappear, go underground. Well, that is his domain. The Mole Man is your closest and most loyal comrade, so I would watch him closely. They always have the longest knives. Now, on the surface, it would be very easy to dismiss Mole Man because oftentimes in Marvel Comics, he's a character that you don't really take seriously. The only time Mole Man and the Moloids ever really seemed to matter in Marvel Comics was during like Old Man Logan, when, for example, I think Mole Man was one of the guys who was killed. The Moloids basically went feral, but they would like snatch people from the surface, bring them underground and eat them, right? So like it was really, really crazy. Not that dissimilar from the Morlocks, right? From like the Time Machine. But Mole Man, as a guy who has the Moloids and they're his eyes and ears, he knows everything that goes on in the city. And one of the best things about Wilson Fisk is he would say the greatest tool and the greatest weapon anybody has at their disposal is information. And he says, this city is mine. And what is mine, I have divided over the years and given a portion to each of you. But now it seems our city has an infestation. Some rats have forgotten their place. And the question that's asked by Kraven, would you prefer that the 6 of us catch them or should we kill them? And the response of Wilson Fisk, actually, I was thinking we could make a game of it because the 6th member of the Sinister Six is Wilson Fisk himself. And I love that idea. And so what this does is this transitions back to Spider-Man and to Harry meeting up with Otto Octavius, who again had made these kind of fine-tuned adjustments to the nature of Harry's suit, but has also developed a whole new suit for Peter Parker. Now, one of the things that goes on here is Peter starts talking to the suit itself. And if you haven't figured out by now, Jonathan Hickman is laying the groundwork for 2 things. The first is Venom, right? That this suit will essentially become Venom because it's sentient, right? I mean, is there really a difference between an artificial intelligence mapped after somebody's brain patterns that can function and think on its own and like an alien organism that just takes over a person's body? Not really when you break it down, right? And so the other thing that he's setting the groundwork for is Harry Osborn becoming the Green Goblin. Because when it came to Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin, he had 2 diametrically opposing voices in his head. There was Norman Osborn, who was usually trying to do the right thing. Then there was the Green Goblin that was corrupting him. Now, technically, the Green Goblin arose by way of the Goblin serum. But the fact is that when it comes to Harry, his quote-unquote serum, or the poison in his veins, so to speak, is his father's own voice, right? Who is much darker and more villainous than Harry is. And so I love the idea that yes, Harry and Peter Parker are becoming some of the most iconic versions of themselves at varying points in Marvel's history, but it's being done by technology as opposed to something like a goblin formula or an alien symbiote. So it is cool. But Peter talking to this thing, right, because it is an artificial intelligence and it's mapped under his brainwaves, the more he talks to it, the more it takes on his identity, and the more it sees itself as being an important and intrinsic part of his life. Hence why it was saying things like, tell the kids I said happy birthday, and so on and so forth. And so imagine the betrayal it would experience if Peter got rid of it, right? So again, it's really, really awesome the way that this works. And so what happens is they kind of toy with the idea and they're like, okay, look, I don't really know how I feel about being removed from you, Peter, but we should also see what kind of suit he has in store, because maybe it would integrate me. Maybe I'd be better served being utilized in a different capacity, maybe an external kind of source of information, that kind of thing. I mean, he doesn't really want to be taken away from Peter. And he responds to it with a bit of anger in his voice, but they agree to see the suit that Otto has created for them. And the cool thing here is it's a modified version of the Iron Spider suit from Civil War, right? Probably the most iconic Spider-Man suit of all time, outside of his traditional red and blue suit, but it's dope. Now, here's the funny thing, right? Peter shoots it down. He's like, no. I mean, the suit's cool. I appreciate that you did it, but like, no. It's a little too gaudy for me. Now, he's not really able to say it in an effective way, and it's Harry Osborn who kind of pulls, right, like Otto Octavius aside, and it's like, look, man, I think what Peter's saying is he does love the way the suit looks and everything it's capable of, but like, it's a little too much suit. And to a degree it is, right, because like he runs over what it can do. He says, I've optimized the web shooters. This runs off a cartridge system, but now the web is capable of holding an additional 5 tons of weight. It's got rocket launchers, concussion bombs, stun webs, and cutting-edge lasers, in addition to being bullet, EMP, and explosion-proof. It's made of a heavy-duty titanium alloy that's sealed with a flexible second skin. Nothing can get inside this suit that is not microscopic, and most importantly, it's connected to all of our systems. You will have full access to Osborn's data files, and we will have full access to your diagnostics to ensure maximum performance, of course. So literally, I mean, this is almost like a war machine, right? Like a James Rhodes war machine suit. It's way more than Spider-Man needs, and for a couple of reasons. One, because Spider-Man's not going to use rocket launchers. Don't get me wrong. It would be dope to see Spider-Man in a fight and just like these like rocket, things come out of his back and just start firing off rockets at people. That would be dope. And the Iron Spider suit was very much an offensive weapon suit, but it also had like incredible, defensive capabilities. Now, granted, that suit was in the main Marvel universe. This is the Ultimate Universe. So 2 different realities, 2 different suits, but the basis is still the same. But for Peter, it also takes away his ability to move effectively, because as most all of you guys know, Peter's greatest ability is to combine his agile nature with his spider sense, right? His spider sense goes off, tells him something's going on, and he can respond almost immediately, right? And so Peter, of course, doesn't want it. Instead, what they end up doing is developing what's basically a spandex suit that leaves out all the various weapon capabilities that the Iron Spider suit has, but it maintains all the defensive stuff. So it's awesome, right? Technically, it's a spandex Kevlar composite, but it does allow them all those defensive abilities and to basically operate with complete freedom of movement. The problem is that in the middle of all of this, they're both attacked by Black Cat. Now, of course, Black Cat fires off a shot that shuts down the suit of Harry Osborn. So he's basically powerless, right? The suit's completely locked up, which is actually a throwback to Punisher versus the Marvel Universe, because in that story, which was also in an alternate reality, that there was what was called the glitch, where Iron Man's suit shut down and he died in it. Literally, like he died of dehydration in his own suit. There's a point in the comic where Punisher's like, 3 days before the screaming stopped, or something along those lines. Imagine being locked in a tomb like that, man. It's horrifying. But like the cool thing is he's just kind of there trying to get his suit back online. So it really just kind of comes down to Spider-Man and Black Cat. And what Black Cat does here is he kind of says like, this is a big game, Spider-Man. You better be ready because I'm only one of 6, right? There are others who will be coming for you. But even then, Spider-Man doesn't know who this guy is. Now, one of the other things that goes on, and I wanted you to kind of pay very close attention to this, is that yes, the Norman Osborn AI is currently active in the suit. And yes, it could reactivate the suit immediately, but it actually requires Harry to beg, right? To admit that like, hey, I need you in this fight. The Norman Osborn AI is effectively becoming corrupted to a degree, right? It's becoming its own dark personality, i.e. the Goblin personality. So again, it's so cool, right? I love the way that Hickman does this. Now, of course, you do have Black Cat who kind of reveals himself to Spider-Man. It's really dope and it's ridiculously overly theatrical. He was like, I'm a shadow in the night, a whisper of a dream. My friends, what few I allow myself to have, embarrassingly call me the Velvet Blade. But my enemies, they call me the Black Cat. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, and I wanna know your all's opinion down in the comment section. Which do you think is a better name? The Velvet Blade or Black Cat? Because I'm not gonna lie, man, Velvet Blade sounds pretty dope, right? It sounds like he's gonna like make love to you and then kill you, right? It sounds pretty amazing. I love the idea. I love the name, the Velvet Blade. That's just so awesome here. But again, right, Black Cat using the whip as you would expect. This guy is an ace with it. And even Spider-Man doesn't fully understand what's going on, right? Like, there's a point where like he goes to hit him and Black Cat's talking about how like he never misses, right? And Peter's like, you did. But like, he wasn't going after Peter. He was going after the well at the top of the building, which when he yanks it down, just like covers Peter in water, which immediately allows Black Cat to kind of use this momentary distraction and seize control of him. And he says, you and the Goblin, you are both prey and prize. And so this leads to like Harry begging his father, like, please reactivate the suit. Peter needs our help. And of course, the suit does reactivate. Now, here's a kicker to this. Remember I told you earlier, the alliances of Black Cat were tenuous at best. This guy follows his own moral code. He doesn't really follow any real direction of anybody. And so when he's talking to Peter, he says, you know what you did. You caught our attention. Then you dare lay siege to Olympus. You angered the gods. And for those sins, your lives are forfeit. And Peter asked the question, and what do you get? And the response of Black Cat, that's none of your business. And Peter says, well, I guess that gives me something to live for then, doesn't it? And so he just like throws him into an object and webs him up. And so they kind of have a bit of an initial conversation here to a degree, where Black Cat says, I suppose living is for the young, and I am but an old man. The day has been coming for some time. And Peter's like, what are you talking about? And he says, go ahead, get it over with. You are going to kill me now, aren't you? And the response of Peter is, no, of course not. Don't be ridiculous. And so the response of Black Cat is, well, then I guess this is my lucky day. But they all are, aren't they? And he dons a blade, and it looks like he's going to kill Peter. But notice this, Peter's spider sense doesn't go off, right? And so it's just like reboot complete, right? Harry Osborn's suit fires back up, the armor's online, he immediately fires a shot on Black Cat and sends him flying off a building, right? And he just like crashes into the ground below. Now, he is still moving, although I don't know if Peter can tell if it's that he's actually alive or like his legs twitching, right? You know, because like his brain's still sending signals, I guess, as it shuts down. I don't really know. But at the end of the day, like the guy's taken away in an ambulance. And this is one of the first times where you start to see a rift form between the two of them, because Harry Osborn feels justified in his actions, right? He says, he would have killed you, Peter, and not thought twice about it. I heard what he said to you about him and Fisk and God knows whoever else making a game of hunting us. I'm afraid we're running out of time here. You need to wake up and realize who these people are and what they are willing to do. My parents are gone because of them. So is your aunt. And if you think they won't do the same thing to you or me or our families, you are crazy. And he says, I don't know what you want, Peter. I didn't make the rules that we're playing by. And Peter says, but we can't be like them. We're supposed to be heroes. We're supposed to be better than that. We have to be. And Harry kind of mulls over that for a second, and then he just says, you need to know something, Peter. If I'm put to the choice and one of them is about to kill you, I will never hesitate. And so literally Peter's just kind of like, all right, because it shows that Harry is kind of going down a darker path, and he is willing to kill if it comes down to it. So again, this is Jonathan Hickman laying the groundwork for what will be probably one of the most heartbreaking moments in Ultimate Spider-Man, when these two inevitably fight and Harry Osborn most likely dies or just full-on transitions into becoming a villain and becomes the arch nemesis of Peter. I feel like I'm gonna cry when that happens. So what this does, this is the Jonathan Hickman story, right? It just kind of goes along and does its thing, and then he pulls the rug out from all of us, and it's so phenomenal. So this kind of opens up with like basically Christmas, right, at the Parker family house is really all it is. And everybody just kind of coming and going, and everybody just sort of doing their thing and meeting up. And in fact, we're actually kind of introduced to a few of Spider-Man's friends and family that we didn't really know existed before for whatever reason. So initially, Mr. and Mrs. Brock actually don't show up, right? Like they don't appear, although it seems like they normally do. And then there's Aunt Anna. And Aunt Anna, of course, just a long-standing member of the family. And then there's Gail. Now, Gail is what you and I would refer to as the person no one wants to see, essentially, right? Like, she never shows up. She's the sister of MJ, and there's just this massive beef between the two of them, and it's really, really interesting, right? I'm kind of curious to see how you guys feel about the whole thing. But then, of course, there's like Peter Parker's son and Peter Parker's daughter, right? Because remember, for those of you guys who are just catching up, in the Ultimate Universe, Peter Parker was an adult before he became Spider-Man. And so for the most part, it's just kind of a little bit of chit-chat, right? People sort of getting caught up here. And that's when you switch over to Mary Jane Watson's mom. Now, her mom is kind of a dick, to be honest, right? And I guess every family out there has like that one person. And it's kind of her mom initially giving her a hard time over the idea that she seemingly burned her food, and even hassling MJ over the fact that like she can't cook or she won't cook or whatever her reason happens to be for just not being good at cooking. Now, there is a moment when Mary Jane's daughter, right? Mary Jane Watson and Peter Parker, when their daughter comes up to MJ and gives her the phone and says, Gwen Stacy's calling. Now, for those of you guys who haven't really been keeping track, Peter Parker is not, and I don't believe that he had been in a meaningful romantic relationship with Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy is with Harry Osborn. So initially, MJ just kind of like blows off the phone call. She's like, we'll call her back later on. Probably just calling to like wish her happy birthday or something along those lines. And that's when her mom is back on it again. Because MJ asks like, why are you here, right? Like, you literally show up here out of the blue. You don't give me any answer for why you're here in the first place. How long are you going to be staying here? And she's like, well, are you trying to get rid of me? And the response of MJ is like, of course not, Mom. I'm not trying to get rid of you. I mean, yes, I am, but I'm not going to tell you that. She's like, I'm happy you're here, but you didn't tell anyone that you were coming, and I just want to plan accordingly. So do you have any idea how long it's going to be? And the response of MJ's mom here is like, I haven't really thought about it. We'll see what comes up. And so ultimately MJ is like, all right, fine. So like, you show up at my house, you don't tell me you're going to come here. And then when you do get here, you're letting me know that you'll let me know when you feel like leaving. Not in my house, man. I'll give you the boot. But then she starts eyeing Uncle Ben, right? Because remember, Aunt May isn't a part of the picture anymore. And so she kind of asks, like, how's, Uncle Ben doing? Like, is he seeing anybody yet? And that's where MJ's like, look, come on, right? Don't start that stuff. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like MJ's mom she's trying to get her groove on, right? You can't really fault her for that. But at the same time, it is Uncle Ben, so like, the guy's effectively off limits. Now, here's where things get interesting. And this is what I want you to do over the course of this video. Keep your eye on Peter Parker. Keep your eye on Peter Parker, right? Because Peter Parker is so interesting in this, right? He never says a word the entire time. And you guys know that like Peter's a chatty Cathy, right? Like that dude can't shut up to save his life. So it's one of these weird things when suddenly he just doesn't say anything to anybody. And it could just be that he's kind of soaking it all in and just kind of enjoying the moment. I mean, you guys know from Christmas parties and whatnot, the best thing to do is just kind of sit there and relax and just not really do anything at all and watch the madness unfold. And so that's when Gail walks up on May, right? The daughter of Peter and MJ. And it's just kind of like, do you remember who I am? Right? Now, of course, MJ shows up and she's like, the last time you saw her, she was 2, right? No, she doesn't remember who you are, and don't act like it's on her that she doesn't remember who you are, because the reality is, as a 2-year-old, you're just not that important to her. And kind of under the radar, MJ's sort of like, and you're not really that important to me either. Now, of course, again, like Gwen Stacy calls, but of course the call is kind of ignored by MJ. And that's when you get into a kind of back and forth between MJ and Gail. Initially, it starts off somewhat light, right? Where it's just sort of like, okay, why are you here? Like, why are you showing up out of the blue? And that's where Gail's kind of like, can't you just be happy to see me? But the response of MJ is, I am happy to see you, but like, come on, you never show up with anything like this unless there's something that you need, right? So like, what's going on? Especially after what it was that you said to me, why in the world are you here? And again, that's where the back and forth kicks in, because the response of Gail is like, I suppose I could guess what you're talking about, but even then, I'm not sure I'd need to apologize for it. And of course, MJ's like, well, you don't think that telling me that I was wasting my life because I married the wrong guy, and then saying that having kids was making all those mistakes permanent isn't something that you need to apologize for, which is a pretty crappy thing to say to somebody that you supposedly cared about. And the response of Gail is like, I just thought you could have done better. right? I mean, number one rule of interacting with people, just because you can say something doesn't necessarily mean that you should. If you're like me, it's a very frustrating rule, right? You just kind of like to tell people what you're thinking because you value honesty, but you also don't want to be a jerk. So it is kind of a fine line when you're dealing with other human beings because people are weird. But that's when Aunt Anna kind of spills the beans to a degree on what's going on, because she's talking to Uncle Ben and she's like, yeah, like Gail's getting divorced, right? And Ben's like, well, when did that happen, right? And that's when Anna's just kind of like, I mean, I'm not really sure exactly. She doesn't really like to talk about it. And I just found out last week. Now, of course, this is when MJ's mom shows up here, right? A divorced woman. So clearly she's the best person to give advice on how to make a relationship work. And she's like, look, I'm not one to give unsolicited advice, but having experience with being divorced as well as being a widow, I do know that they both have the same solution. And that's where she's kind of like hitting at Uncle Ben under the radar, right? And he's just sort of like, I mean, okay, what's the solution? And she's like, well, I mean, you lie down for a while, you have a really good cry, but sooner or later, you got to get back on the horse, right? She's down bad. This woman probably smells of white diamonds, the old lady perfume. She probably smells of white diamonds and desperation, because that's kind of how it's coming off. Now, this is when you get back into Peter again, right? And this is another moment with Peter that's a little wonky, because MJ just kind of just starts talking to him about everything that's going on, right? Like, first my mother, she shows up here, right? Like showing up out of nowhere, no warning or anything, and then acting like she's the one that's put out. And then Gail, right? Like, we haven't talked in years and she's just spouting the same garbage. And I don't know, like, I know that I should forgive her and I should get past it, but I kind of don't want to. Like, if that's the case, like, why do I invite her, right? Why do I always invite her if I don't want to have anything to do with her? She's just like, because I just don't want it to be this way. And I hope for something better, right? And she's like, yes, of course I do, right? Thank you, Peter. You're the best. And just walks off, right? She just kind of wanted to vent herself to Peter. But again, Peter never says anything, right? So again, just him just kind of watching this whole thing unfold, right? This whole thing go down is kind of cool. So ultimately, NJ ends up grabbing Gail and just bringing her into the other room. And this exchange is amazing because she says, I want to be clear about something. I love you, but this nonsense between us has to stop. I want it to stop, but you have to meet me halfway. Deal? And that's where Gail's just kind of like, okay, I could do that. And so that's when MJ's like, spill the beans, right? Like, why are you here now? And Gail just kind of comes clean, right? She's like, I found out that my husband was having an affair and I'm getting divorced. And that's when MJ is like, oh my God. And she's like, is there anything you could do to fix it? I don't know why you'd want to fix somebody who had an affair, right? I mean, just help them finish with all their living or something. I don't know. And MJ actually offers that here in a second, right? Because initially Gail's just like, I've added it all up, right? I thought about seeing if I could save things, if I could find some way to make it work out. And then I found out it's been going on for a couple of years, several years, and other people knew. And so that's where MJ's just like, okay, so here's the thing. I'm not going to help you kill him, but if you need somebody to like help you bury the body or something like that, I'm definitely down, right? I could drive, I could get you to where you need to go. I mean, hell's bells, we could take him there alive. We could make that man dig his own grave, right? We could do any number of things. Wouldn't that be a shame, right? You make a man dig his own grave? Man, that'd be crazy. But again, like Gwen Stacy calls, and that's where MJ is like, look, okay, I'll take it here in a minute. Obviously, she's called like 3 times. There's got to be something going on. And so that's when you kind of get back to this conversation between MJ and Gail, right? And so what you end up finding out is the reason why Gail came there is because she was looking for some kind of support, but not in the sense that she could like have a conversation with MJ and MJ would pat her on the back and tell her everything's going to be okay and that kind of stuff. She came there because she wanted to compare the life that Mary Jane Watson had to the life that she has. And the hope was that MJ's life was worse. So even with everything that Gail has going on, as bad as it may be, her sister's not doing as well, which is one of the crappiest things that you could say to another person. But what she tells her is just like, it wasn't that way at all. Like, your job is, I mean, I don't know, your job's your job, but you have a beautiful family, you have a beautiful husband. Like, at the end of the day, sure, like your life is about as boring as sitting in a room and watching paint peel. But the reality here is you love it and you are happy. No one understands except for you, but you are happy with your life. And that's where MJ just kind of like, all right, if that's an apology, it by no means makes up for anything that's ever been said before. And that's where Gale's just kind of like, if that's what you really want is an apology, then fine. Like, here's an apology. I'm sorry for being a jerk to you and being rude all the time. And the two of them effectively make up, right? You know, so they're back on good terms again because it's the holiday and everybody's just sort of celebrating, you know, and it's like, man, like, it's been a great year. And they're just kind of rounding out the evening, Peter watching everything unfold. Now, at that point, Gwen Stacy calls again. And that's where MJ is just like, okay, something's going on. So she grabs a phone from Peter. And then, like, when she answers, Gwen's like, oh God, finally, why haven't you been picking up? I'm losing my mind over here. Is Peter there? Does he know anything? And that's where MJ's just kind of like, okay. Like, so she grabs Peter, they go into another room, and she's like, okay, you're on speakerphone. What's going on? And that's where Gwen says, I'm at our house for the holidays. I had a meeting out of town, so I came straight here. And Harry was supposed to drive up, but he didn't show up. That was 6 days ago, and I cannot reach him. Does Peter have any idea where he is? And I told you, man, I told you guys, son, I told you guys the ending to this is crazy because Peter's just staring out a window, right? MJ walks up to him and she's like, did you hear what Gwen was saying? Like, do you know where Harry is? When she goes to touch him, a black inky substance comes off of Peter. It's the symbiote, right? Remember, Peter's suit is made of the Venom symbiote. It was a gift given to him by Tony Stark, but even Tony didn't really understand what was going on. And that's where she's like, you're not Peter. Where is Peter? What have you done with Peter? Like, say something. And like, he just turns around with his eyes black. Clearly the symbiote's in control and it just says, Merry Christmas. But here's the kicker, right? The symbiote is not in control of Peter Parker. The symbiote is duplicating Peter Parker because what you do is you switch over to Kraven the Hunter. Remember, Kingpin has contracted and kind of put together his own Sinister Six to go after Peter and to go after Harry Osborn. And so Kraven the Hunter has them both. And in fact, he's feeding them an IV drip to keep them alive. I gotta tell you guys, man, I know the Kraven the Hunter movie was garbage, right? Like, it was a case study in how to screw up a movie that by all standards of measurement should have been great. But I am excited to see what Kraven the Hunter is like in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. Because truth to tell, man, he reminds me of Voss from Far Cry 3. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I will catch you all later. Peace.